We are recording.
I see, just to let you know, Craig is from Denver, Colorado, and on mute. So thank you for introducing yourself. We'll have more opportunities near the 2/3 mark of our conversation this evening to introduce ourselves to one another in smaller groups. And I really look forward to learning more about where you all are and what kinds of things you're seeing in your home communities or in your locale. As I started to say, I'm Karen Brammer. I manage the Green Sanctuary Program, and I'm one of 3 people on a team now developing and hosting these environmental justice practitioner network gatherings. These are designed for those of us who are working to figure out how to do our environmental work in ways that build beloved community, that build collaboration, and shift away from doing environmental work as only philanthropists or experts, trying to break down some of the way too effective segregation patterns that run rampant in our culture. And I'm so delighted to say this evening that Janice Marie Johnson has agreed to be with us. Janice Marie is one of my colleagues at the Multicultural Growth and Witness staff group at the Unitarian Universalist Association. Janice has been working in that capacity for far longer than I've been in the staff group, and certainly has done a tremendous amount of work. And when I invited Janice to come on board, I knew of your portfolio, Janice, around your work on building beloved community across segregated communities. But I was not as aware of your portfolio, or at least your life commitment to environmental justice. So it's been such a pleasure to learn that a little bit more about that in your life and who you are. I'll also say that Janice hopefully will share some of her international experience, which is broad and wide and deep. So we're quite blessed to have you here. Just to orient people a wee bit, we will do what will be probably more like an interview this evening with Reverend Dr. Janice, and then there will be a time for the whole group to just put some questions out there, and it will work well for us if you type your question into the chat on the right-hand side. If you don't see the chat bar on your right-hand side, go to the bottom, bring your cursor to the bottom of the screen, and you should see some icons on the bottom of the screen, and one of them should say chat. If that, you can then click on that and see what people are typing in for everyone or just for you individually, etc. But you can choose, if you'd like, to ask a question or make a comment or ask for help if you're having technical issues as well. So we'll have time for large group questions and a little bit of answer time, and then we'll go into small groups that are designed hopefully to encourage as much networking and sharing of information as possible among us. And then we'll come back to the larger group and do some very brief sharing about what stood out for us in those conversations, and then we'll close. We'll be done by 9 o'clock Eastern time. And so I guess I would encourage you, if you have any questions, to just type on the side. And so what I see now that I think everyone sees, hopefully, the message from Allie that says that we're all muted except Janice and myself until we get to the group conversation. So please do type in a question or concern that you have if you have one, okay? So Janice, hooray, thank you for being here.
Here we are.
Yeah, here we are. So Janice, I think you're aware that prior to beginning this session, we sent some questions to the people who registered
Uh-huh.
to encourage them to think ahead of time about something that they might focus on in their own communities. And some of these questions, I think, are really parallel to what you and I were sharing. And one of them, I also, excuse me, I'm interrupting myself here to say that for people who are on the phone, please do unmute yourself to ask your questions when we get to the larger group. Mm-hmm. And Allie, if I didn't say that correctly, please correct me, okay?
Hi y'all. This is Allie. I have muted all the lines, including the phone lines, so I don't think you actually are able to unmute through the interface. So I just want people on the phone to know, since you can't type in the chat window, just feel free to say your questions once we get to the group question period. But for now, know that everyone is on mute. Thanks.
See, I need all the help I can get in the technical end of things. Thank you, Allie. So Janice, the questions that we invited people to think about in their own locale, it started with thinking about our faith, our common Unitarian Universalist faith, and if there are others visiting from other faith communities, welcome, to think about your own faith orientation. But what is it in our faith that compels us or encourages us to widen our circle, especially around environmental work, where I think I've shared with you, Janice, that there is a live tension between many of us who are focused on the environment wanting to have a sense of urgency to really move environmental work as quickly as possible, and knowing in my own heart and experience that building beloved community takes some time. So people, we need to keep grounding ourselves and understanding why this is so important. So if you would remind us of that from your own perspective, that would be wonderful.
Well, I think it is important. It is the foundation beneath the foundation, if you will. And I want to check in if everyone can hear me clearly and see me clearly. I subscribe to indigenous teachings that help inform me and the way I live my life, and they are very much in keeping with my faith as a Unitarian Universalist. I would say that the very notion of circle and widening of the circle is near and dear to my heart. I well understand and respect the power of circles. So I want to name that first. And if I may just share a few words from Black Elk, who has taught me so much. I would say Black Elk reminds us that everything the power of the world does is done in a circle. The sky is round, and I have heard that the earth is round like a ball, and so are all the stars. The wind in its greatest power whirls. Birds make their nests in circles, for theirs is the same religion as ours. The sun comes forth and goes down again in a circle. The moon does the same, and so do all the stars. All are round. Even the seasons form a great circle in their changing and always come back again to where they were. The life of a person is a circle from childhood to childhood, and so it is in everything where power moves. Those words that I learned long, long ago have informed me, and I would say helped me develop my respect for and commitment to Mother Earth and the environment that we inhabit. And if that is not my faith, I could transcribe that almost line to line to encompass our 7 principles, our Unitarian Universalist principles, to consider our sources. So I know that as a Unitarian Universalist, I am committed to make real my understanding of both the complexity and the simplicity of the circle that we share. You know, it's been a long time. My commitment to the environment started off in such a wacky way. My dad was the Rapporteur General for that first Stockholm Conference on the Environment. And he didn't know how to type. My twin sister and I were his secretaries, you know those days. And in typing up his papers and speeches, I fell in love with what I was typing. So much so that I decided I became a research fellow. I moved to Germany. I got a fellowship with the World Wildlife Fund and International Union for the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, and studied environmental law. Who knew? This is all out of having to be my dad's secretary. Wow. All right, I loved my dad. Wow. But out of that, understanding, for example, on a broad scale, if oil spills in the middle of the ocean, who's responsible for cleaning it up? You know, whether it's Gowanus in Brooklyn, whether it's in my country, Jamaica, where, oh my gosh, we had this red dirt. And school children and parents would have to deal with this red dirt. They had no idea what it was. In my grandmother's parish of St. Elizabeth in Jamaica, come to find that the red dirt was bauxite. And Jamaica was for many years one of the top 3 producers of bauxite in the world. Then I have to look at, okay, there's a name that we all know, Reynolds, as in Reynolds Wrap. Reynolds comes into my little country, and the bauxite is slowly and steadily depleted. Wherever you go, you think about areas with beautiful luminescent lakes. The beautiful light dries up. What is that? Just on and on and on. So that all of that has shaped me. And I'd say the final shaping after having studied environmental law was having a delegation of the Haudenosaunee from upper New York. Karen, you'd know the people, led by their leader, Chief Oren Lyons, coming to the United Nations, first ever conference on the environment. And I will never forget, the people started coming in. And even the United Nations, with all of its cultural competency, could not believe that the leaders were women. The women were the leaders. And so I always find it fascinating to look at who we are, how we get to where we are, where we're going, with the underpinning that this precious life is ours to nurture. And that's part of our responsibility as humans, and certainly as UUs. I'd say that's how I come at this, how I've been shaped by it. And my commitment is real. And in these difficult times, when people are vying for resources of all kinds, and some resources hurt other resources, how do we stay true? And I actually think it is very difficult work and ministry to stay true. You are up against if you think of ecotourism, the beauty of ecotourism in the tropical countries, for example, where you have the natural resources that form the materials for your buildings, so on and so forth, and the people have no work. And tourism in the traditional sense comes in and gives a paycheck. What do you do if you are, in fact, the leader of the country or the community? I'd say we wrestle with tough questions, and the wrestling is part of what we're called to do as people of faith. We do our best. Yeah. Yeah.
And Janice, so you've had so many opportunities to witness leaders from different cultures and maybe leaders approaching a community for which there is not yet a contact made.
Yes.
With the community, doing work well together and making mistakes that get in the way of doing the work well. How would you encourage those of us who feel such a tremendous need to do environmental work, climate justice work, and shortchange because it's so immediate, it's such an intense need? How do we slow ourselves down to build those honorable relationships?
The first thing I think you do is notice that you're moving quickly. I mean, take the time just to say, because we tend to say, I've got this. I know what's needed. Let me come in and help. Good to meet you. I'm so-and-so. I'm here to help. Let me come in and help. Take the time to notice that there are other ways of engaging in community other than that fix-it approach, that pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I'm here to help you. I'm going to save the day. To take the time to come in respectfully, trying to get a sense of, well, what is the situation beyond that which I can see? I may have to slow down my listening power and understand that language is so complex. One word for me is not the same word for you. How can I practice a deep-seated humility? And it's hard. And it's hard if you think you know the answer, to step back, be very humble, take the time to observe, take the time to establish relationships, but know why you're establishing them. What you're being asked to do, I would suggest, is if you're coming into cultures that are not your own, you have to learn the culture. You have to listen to the culture, feel the culture, establish the kind of relationship and rapport, and out of that, find touchstones that seem to be touchstones offering trust. So you're not coming in as Dr. So-and-so to fix this situation. I am coming in, if you will, to move with you, to learn what I can, and in a sense, to accompany you on your journey. I may have some good ideas along the way, but I believe it's that humility that opens doors and portals. Yeah. It is not easy, but we've seen that over and over again. Let me come in, let me fix this. I mean, and it is hard to, I use a term that is not necessarily popular, to find your place, to know your place, to understand your social and cultural location when you are so in the minority. Why would anyone want to welcome you with open arms? It's a tough situation, but I think it requires all of that. And then you engender trust. What that also means is you're invited to put your agenda aside. We all have agendas. You want to fix it. You want to do good in the world. There is a sense of urgency that you feel. We know that the sense of urgency is important. But if you're working with a community that does not feel that sense of urgency, how can you help them learn it without literally hammering them on their heads with your sense of urgency? Particularly, and this is really tough, particularly knowing that your sense of urgency comes out of your actions. The community oftentimes is not the community that created the conditions that are untenable, but they're the ones living in it, doing the best they can with it. And now it is not easy to come in and tell a people who is surviving, you're doing this wrong for the sake of the client, you've got to do this. It just doesn't work like that. The relational is key. It's not easy. I'm shy, I'm introverted, I do my best to come in. This is who I am. Who are you? I want to know who you are. I want to know your name. I want to know your culture. I don't want to translate for you. How might I best honor you? And move on from there. And you know that we will make mistakes along the way. Mistakes happen all the time. We all make them because none of us has identities that are so all-encompassing that we won't make them. It's just the reality. And so when I think about microaggressions, number one, feel the fear, do it anyway. Know that we will make mistakes, and if possible, create a condition where you can say to your new neighbor, help me out. I know that I'll make mistakes along the way. Understand that I am doing my best. I will make mistakes. If you can gently let me know that I've made a mistake, that will go a long way with my learning. And I think when I hear that, I appreciate it. I think when we hear that, our hearts sort of break open and we will be there to shepherd the situation to its best self. I've been thinking about the notion of microaggressions, and I'm just spending this week in Boston. I've had my own share of microaggressions, and let me check in with folks to see do we know what a microaggression is? Do we have a definition of a microaggression that we need to promote?
Yes.
I
think you need to. I'm seeing heads
wagging.
Wagging? I don't know.
Don't know what a microaggression is. All right, we're going to talk about microaggressions. And let me say, microaggressions, these are not the biggies. These are the tiny, tiny drops of water that wear away at the stone. An example for me. I don't like to travel by air. Number one, I don't like to fly. But number two, airport security is very difficult for me. My hair is locked. I have what some people call dreadlocks. I call them happy locks. But what I go through at airports over and over again, I'm Jamaican. So maybe people think I have ganja or marijuana wrapped in my hair. I have to go through this awful wanding process almost every time I travel through an airport. And I'm not comfortable doing it publicly, being wanded and examined, but I'm more comfortable doing it publicly than being taken into a tiny room where I don't know what I may have put in my hair. Microaggression. Is that your real hair? You speak English so well. Why shouldn't I speak English so well? It's my first language. So where are you really from? Etc. Just to help you understand my understanding of microaggression. The notion in our worship spaces and in fellowship hour, I remember when I first went to my church, the Community Church of New York, and fellowship hour, I would hear folks sort of saying over and over again, it was the start of something, so where's your child going to college? In my world, there's an expectation that our children go to college. What about our children who, for whatever the reason, don't go to college? We've set up a norm that college is the norm. I see with the water for the water communion at the end of summer, where's your water from? And if my water is from my tap, I mean, it sounds nice and sexy to say it's from Naples. It's from my tap. I stayed in New York all summer. Some of the unintended mistakes that we make out of our assumptions about one another. Microaggression, you hear it over and over again. Nadia Chang, one of my dear friends, Chinese American, all through school, she was supposed to be the expert in math. She didn't feel like the expert in math. She's Asian, she's got to be the expert in math. Does that help folks with what a microaggression is? Someone comes from Puerto Rico, the assumption is you must speak Spanish. How many of us, born wherever we're born, don't speak the mother tongue that we should have learned how to speak for whatever the reason? And over again, not once, not twice, but over and over and over again, it wears us down. And it wears our spirit down. Those are the microaggressions of which I speak. My mom was a researcher neurologist. She would come in to see the patient sometimes. She had to be the nurse. She could never be seen as the doctor. She was a woman, for goodness sakes, and she was Black, etc. I mean, they're big and small microaggressions. A microaggression for me, quite honestly, is, if I hear it once more, so when are you going to seminary, Janice? When are you going to become a UU minister? My twin sister is a Unitarian Universalist minister. I'm an educator.
I just made that mistake, Janice.
I know you did. And it's funny because I do have a doctorate in ministry, but my choice was conflict transformation, environmental law. I did a very circuitous route to my doctorate in ministry, but in many of our circles, every General Assembly, for example, so when are you going to seminary, Janice? When are you going to become a minister, a UU minister? I just say, I'm fine, I'm whole, I'm an educator, my sister's a minister, we're good. But over and over again, I'm joking, but it kind of takes its toll. And I kind of, I steel myself for the question that I know will come. 27 years ago, when I was a new parent and a new widow, over and over again, folks are saying, you can't be a widow, you're too young. I mean, hello, people challenging your personal experience over and over and over again. Those would be microaggressions. And at some point, you can look at some on screen and talk a little more about them. And they're real and they hurt. They're like tiny cuts along the way, and they take their toll. But microaggressions, so one of the challenges for us, and we're all guilty, if you will, of creating them. I am as well. We have to become more culturally competent, learn about our neighbors, start noticing when we slip up and say something that actually might be hurtful to another, whether it's we say it or we play music from a culture that's not ours without properly acknowledging it or understanding the context out of which it comes. I know, for example, in my context, I know people love reggae. I love reggae. But I remember being at a major event at a General Assembly and hearing a reggae song that we use for funerals. And to hear it and see my UU kin dancing to a song that, no, this, you have no idea, this is just for funeral settings. Can you know this about every culture? No. But can you sort of develop a toolkit where you automatically ask, I wonder what this song might mean to someone from Buenos Aires, if it's a song from Argentina. Maybe I could do a little research, give a little credit where it's due, and try to find out the context. And I think if we do this with and for each other, so we become a learning community, that's helpful. Because it is not easy to win and to establish a partnership in any situation you want to go in. I want to work with this group because they care and I care about them. How do you make that first call? How do you take that first step, if you will, into a community in which you're not familiar and may not be comfortable? And yet your deep-seated commitment to change will give you the strength to make the call, to open that door. So for me, it's all about coming in humbly, saying, I don't have this. I'm deeply committed to it. I'm doing my best. Will you help me do my best? And let's see what the needs are for your people. I did a little research. I read about you. I see that there's this project you're working on. I would like to invite you to work on this project with me because it affects all of us. And in this position, it is for us to invite the other culture, the other community into an understanding of, I really do care about you. I care about your location. I care about what's happening to you. And to do that in a way that with time, it may not be just quick, y'all come, with time you're invited in. A practical suggestion is you issue an invitation in more than one way. If you're working with a group that's Spanish speaking, you issue it in English and in Spanish, not just in English. Why would you do that? You issue it in various mediums. There's the printed word, there's a spoken word, etc. I always think broaden the base of how you communicate. You're having an event, should it be at your church, or might it be at their place? And then sometimes you need the brokers, the liaison persons who has an established relationship with XYZ community. You go to them, and you in effect invite them to accompany you as you try to work with them. And I've seen that work with very good results. Yeah.
Janice, you have seen so much given the depth and breadth of the work over these last decades. Do you have a couple stories or a story that you would like to tell that holds in our imaginations the real possibility of getting through our own sense of urgency to a place of listening, and getting through to building beloved community in a way that we can just hold it in our imagination as possible?
I actually think that today we have some opportunities. As I really look at how the Washington Women's March is evolving, and apart from being totally devastated, and I don't think I'm alone in that with events since November 8th, but thinking about how women decided to have a major action in Washington, D.C., the march. I would say from where I sat, seemed to be white women deciding we need to do something. My first thought is, that makes perfect sense. Their sister, Hillary Clinton, was disrespected, quote unquote, my words. Her siblings want to do something to fix this. They want to show the world, the country. But if you leave out women of color who have been busy trying to make a difference for generations, leave women of color out in the planning once again, it is difficult for women of color to feel respected, to feel less than invisible, frankly, and to feel as though, here we go again, the feminist movement is a white movement. What about us? We've been in the trenches as we've been for all these years. And I would say that what we're witnessing is an extraordinary coming together across racial, ethnic, cultural lines amongst women that is quite extraordinary. I think a couple of women from where I sit and a couple of my colleagues we make a mistake. How do we fix this? Invite a couple of colleagues in who in turn come in humbly enough not to say, y'all messed this up. No, but to say, we see the problem, let's talk, let's think about how we get past this, how we might fix this, how we might work together for the greater good, which is really what we all want and need. That would be a very recent example. And I've sort of, with trepidation, watched us get to this place where I might even say, you know what, maybe I could show up at the march. And that for me is at first, well, no, I'm not showing up. It's not my march. But guess what? It is my march. And so things have shifted with some of the honesty and understanding around cultural competencies, and you make a mistake, you don't just shut down the operation, you fix it. and you reach that place where you work together with love and faith and trust that this is a terrible bump in the road. We will get past this and we will learn from this. That's one example that I would offer.
Beautiful, thank you. Janice, it's almost 1:15, and I'm wondering, Elizabeth arrived and asked me to remind you that it's possible to share the documents.
Oh, okay. And I'm looking at just a couple of small faces, and so I had no idea that Elizabeth had arrived. I would like you to, Elizabeth, if you could for one moment, so we have a little break, let's show the cartoon. If you could have us look at that, and perhaps someone could, I'll lead you through it. But I think it will be really clear at the end of one woman's day what microaggressions are, what they look like, what they sound like, and how they make someone feel.
So Elizabeth, I just want to check in with you to make sure that you have what you need. There it is.
Oh, there it is. Oh. Okay. Why microaggressions hurt. So can you all nod if you can? Oh, thank you, Elizabeth. It's larger. I want to be sure that folks can read this from left to right. Looking good, babe. Let's kick ass today.
All right.
And then the third cab to pass me. I guess I'm taking the train. Hopefully I'll still have time for breakfast. She's on her way to work or school. And then I can't really see what's next, but I see, hey, lady, looking good. Over. Have you lost weight? Oh, no, thanks, but no. Huh. Okay, you still look good. And then here we are at work. Lady, I'm having Cohen make the sales call with Johnson. Lady's client. Wait a minute. Johnson is my project. And then lady's supervisor. Yes, well, you know how old-fashioned he is. So this is couched in, this is to help you, lady. Cohen's got a better chance of closing the deal. The next image is one that I think I am familiar with, and I don't know if others of you are, but ladies trying to speak. So if we retool isn't that a bit hasty? No, I don't think so. I mean, let's just consider the cost. Would you consider not interrupting me anymore, please? And look at what happens in the next one. Look at who's speaking. So I looked at the cost, and I think retooling is a wise move financially. Good work, Jim. This is just in the day. Maybe now we're up to about noon. Okay? Lainey, it's you, Lainey. And I want to say that the way our names are pronounced is one basic aspect of the invitation to work with others. To take the time, if someone tells you that their name is Eulaine, you don't make it Lane. I say my name is Janice. I cannot tell you how many times people say, oh, that's Janice. They know I'm Jamaican. My name is Janice. I actually do know my name. So here we are. Oh, that's a pretty name. Where are you from? Brooklyn. Someone named Lainey from Brooklyn, etc. And then on and on. You get the drift. In having lunch, you sure burger's a good idea for you? Are you sure asking me that is a good choice? And just think in your own lives how we do this with each other. You sure you're okay? Sometimes we have to be careful about how we ask questions. We're meeting Johnson for drinks at 9. Lainey asked, what about me? We only got a reservation for the three of us. We didn't think you'd be into the whole scotch and cigars thing. Sorry. How many assumptions are inherent in that? In addition to excluding her from being in the deal. Next up, excuse me, I didn't order sugar-free. Oh, sorry, I just assumed you would want sugar-free. You can think about the why. Heading home, just so you know, we don't take food stamps. That's fine, I'm paying cash. And I want to say this is something that happens to me over and over and over and over again. And it does not make me feel good. The assumption that I cannot pay for whatever it is that I'm looking at in a store. This is one of the microaggressions that I face almost daily. I also face microaggression of being in a store, and if I'm walking in a store with Karen, I will be followed. Karen, who is white, will not be followed, not nearly as much as I will. And folks will be so busy following me, Karen can do whatever she wants. But I have to be mindful of how I move in places of commerce. I have to be mindful of, make sure you don't walk out with that, whatever it is that you're looking at, because folks would make the assumption that you're stealing rather than you just forgot. Then, of course, let's not talk about the police. Are you meeting someone? No, officer, I live here. Okay, we've had some reports of suspicious activity. And we know the stories and the ones that we know of in recent years where one can lose one's life by breathing while black or brown in front of their home or in their home. It happens over and over again. Poor little Lainey goes on up, talks to her grandmother, si abuela, te amo, takes a bath. She ends up, well done, babe. We kicked ass today. I'm talking about not one day in Lainey's life, but every day in Lainey's life. And I would like to suggest that for people of the global majority, this cartoon is so real that it is painful. It is real. And that's not to say that white people don't have these touchstone moments where assumptions are made. I'm talking about the habitual, over and over and over again, every day. And what that does to people, what that does to families. You know, my late spouse was tall, slim, my complexion. 30 years ago, he couldn't get a cab in New York City to take him home, just to go home for a couple of hours and come back. And one day it became so painful that the decision was that we'd have to live walking distance from his art studio. So we had to move to Manhattan, to the Village. That was cool. But no one should have to do that, because over and over again, Mark couldn't get the cab. And on occasion when I happened to be with him late at night, I'd have to be the one waving down the flag for a flag, because it would be easier for me to get the cab than a tall, slender black man who looked far scarier than a short black woman. So that's microaggressions in a nutshell. And we do that to each other. And I have a little exercise. I don't know that we have time for it, but I'm going to share it with you. We'll be sure that Elizabeth shares it with you to work on individually, and maybe take it to your congregations and your community so you are crystal clear about the power of microaggressions to create harm on people's souls. So I'm going to be inviting you to fill something like this exercise out. We won't take time for it now. It seems simplistic. When I go into these schools and I hear these school children say, that's so gay. How does that feel for someone from LGBTQ community over and over and over again, much less from cisgender people who think that's inappropriate languaging? There's another one to an Arab American, wait, you're not Muslim? The assumption that everyone who's Arab American is Muslim, etc. Just you'll get the exercise and we'll take it from there. And thank you, Elizabeth, for that. Yeah.
We have, Janice, I think I know from myself as much as that was a somewhat brief covering of microaggressions that I'm taking a few moments to feel the discomfort and the sadness of it. And thank you for bringing us to that place. And then each of us is invited to imagine in our own organizing lives, in our own communities, how this impacts how we move around our environmental work. And so it's a really potent lesson, and that's just beginning for some of us. I would like to ask you if it would be okay, Janice, if we open up the lines in the chat for questions that people may have of you. Do that for a few minutes and then bring that into our small groups. Would that work for you?
That would work really well for me, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Wonderful. So folks, if you have questions, it sounds like he has unmuted everybody. So one at a time, if you have a question for Janice, please go ahead.
And so if you don't have a question, if you'll go ahead and re-mute yourself and then unmute if you want to speak.
Could someone tell me what Michelle wrote? I can only see half of it. Michelle Walsh put something in the chat that I can't read.
Oh, I was just doing the same thing Allie did. I said it's good for folks to stay muted until speaking. Yeah, and before I was sharing information about the Piedmont Peace Project too.
Yay.
Thanks, Michelle. Any questions?
So I've got a question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, in our congregation, we gave a class on classism,
Yes.
which covers some of these topics. And most of the people who came are from the Social Justice Committee. So how do I spread this further? Is that the kind of question, is this the forum to ask that question? Or is that going somewhere?
Sorry, I missed the question. Could you say it again? I'm sorry, I missed it.
How do you get people outside of the Social Justice Committee interested and aware of these issues?
That's a great question. I think that's a great question. And my approach to that is, let me go back to that word humble. For that small group that would invite folks, and it's usually the same old social justice folks, the same old suspects, take the time to look at your community, your congregation, and look at yourselves. Understand that none of us is an expert. How do you create the space for a larger grouping to perhaps develop an interest or a passion? Because what I believe happens is that the social justice folks are seen as the experts, and no one you kind of skirt them because they're going to make the rest of us look bad. And that's not the intention, but that is the impact. So my suggestion is have various portals, because just as I said earlier, different ways to deliver the message. Have an invitation for whether it's a film or not a 401 film, a basic film, take a book, you invite the entire community congregation one night to read an article. You don't need a book club. One article that's broad-based enough for everyone to begin to develop an awareness. Then maybe you have a green luncheon. And I said, what on earth is a green luncheon? But tiny ways to educate while inviting folks in as an act of inclusion. Because even if you're great at whatever it is, recycling, some folks really do not take the time to recycle. They can't bother with it. And saying the microaggression of you need to recycle is not what to turn them into folks who recycle. Finding gentle ways, discreet ways to deliver the message in various sectors throughout your congregation or community. So I would suggest an audit, if you will. Do an audit, and you're looking at religious education, you're looking at the building, you're looking at every committee, the board, you name it. Where are we? What do we feel about this issue? And the issue might be expensive. It might be we have no interest with it until you find the link to get more and more people engaged. But it's not about saying, you know, we are in deep trouble. This planet is going to whatever. It is the small way. I mentioned to you the lake that used to be offering a beautiful light that is now so dark. Have you noticed so-and-so? I understand that Flint gives us so many examples. We don't have to go far. Standing Rock, understand that everyone is not going to fly to Standing Rock and do that ministry. But there are ways to get most everyone, maybe not everyone, involved with the urgency of now around what's happening in Standing Rock. For some, it's reading an article in the Atlantic. For others, it's a one-on-one conversation. For others, it's a, wow, I read that Karen went to Standing Rock and held back. Wow, what does it mean to be in solidarity and hold back? And find out, how do you want us to work around this yurt? How do you want us to move in and out? How do you want us to embrace your prayers, even if we don't agree with some of the languaging within your prayers? It's that sort of humility that will help you. So the audit, looking at your entire structure, your congregation, where can I make a tiny mark? Don't go for the huge mark. Many tiny steps do much. I don't know, does that answer your question?
That gets me started, and I think that's what we can do. Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Janice, I think we may have time for one more question, and I think Gail has been waiting.
Okay.
To ask that question, at least one question, Gail. So if you unmute yourself and go ahead, that would be great.
And can I see Gail? What do I need?
You see me? This is me.
Hi, Gail. Yes, I see you.
Yeah. I love listening to you. I've learned a lot already from you. And I've just bursting into a lot of them are I guess, process questions. I'm finding that I have this huge sense of urgency that we've been describing. And it's not that people in my congregation aren't well read and informed. Many are involved in, environmental work, and or justice work individually. But our congregation is maybe too busy with our own things. But I guess I'm feeling that we don't really understand environmental justice with outrage. Like there should be some outrage about the injustice that some populations are disproportionately harmed, by human activity. And in our city, we're very privileged. We don't see, I don't think, the disproportionate harms, because it's Indigenous communities in our province and in our country that are the most disadvantaged. And they don't live, in general, in our urban area unless they are coming in to escape the poverty of the reserves, right? And so, and then there's the poverty here. We don't have, I think we only have one Métis person in our congregation that I'm aware of. We have many Black people. It's interesting. We're a big university town, so there's a lot of intermarriage, and there's a lot of people that hang out with Black people. Like there doesn't seem to be as much racism, although it still is here, of course. But a lot of my friends are Black, and we hang out together, but it's the Indigenous people that are really poor. They don't have economic status. And when you had your wonderful slide about the microaggressions, I started to cry, because I've had so many of those things happen to me as a woman, right? And I can only imagine how much worse it is if you're a woman of color and you have those things happening to you.
Gail, can you help focus the question, and then we'll hear Janice's answer and then get in small groups.
Right. So I guess my question is, how do we, like I've listened to your answers about starting very small, but how do we not be instrumental, which is disrespectful, in reaching out to other organizations? How does it not become colonialism? How does it not become oppression, right?
Yeah, great question. Great question. The first thing you need to do, I think, as a person of faith, is ask yourself, why? Why are you doing this? You look around in your place of comfort. Why are you bothering to do this? What's it to you? And what are you willing to give up? Because if you're not willing to give up, don't go too far. It's going to boomerang back. And in terms of identities in your location, it's an Indigenous community, I believe, because you say the Blacks are all doing great.
Not doing great. I wouldn't say that.
Well, but it's not about the individual. It's about the disparity. Yeah. I think that colonialism is more than real. 21st century colonialism. And it's hard to ask someone who cares to look in the mirror and know why. Why are you doing this? And what are you willing to give up? Yeah. To move out of your comfort zone, to figure out how to interface with persons who are not like you. And at the end of the day, you're going home to your comfortable home, and they're not. So we have a moment around, at least in New York where I am, Well, I think we all have a moment around sanctuary that's coming up.
Yeah.
If you think about, Sweet Honey has a beautiful song, Sweet Honey in the Rock, harbor. Would you harbor me? Would I harbor you?
Yeah.
Be real clear about what harbor means, about what sanctuary means. Because it's not about the racialized or identity of a person. To me, it's who's cleaning the streets at 4 a.m. in the morning. Those are the oppressed. And what are you willing to give up for them? Not just you, Gail, as a white woman, if you are, I don't know. I made an assumption. Me, as a Black woman of privilege, what am I willing to give up? To come out of my comfort zone. I don't want anyone to think that this is about white people having to give up and people of color of means or of privilege not having to give up. We need to give up too. And so I encourage you, number one, be hopeful. Despair is too easy and we cannot afford to go there. Be hopeful. Think within your heart of hearts, who am I? What am I willing to do? I say I care. Why do I care? And how do I know that I care?
Mm-hmm.
Those are some thesis questions to help you on the journey.
Very helpful. I think you have to hurt. I hurt.
Yes.
I identify. I hurt.
I hear you. And our webinar is short, but Karen and Elizabeth and Ali all know how to reach me, and I'm more than happy, as we move into entertaining small groups, I'm more than happy to be on the journey with you, Gail, and with each of you. And I am heartened to know that my hurt is shared with you.
Mm-hmm. It is.
I know. Thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you. The team of 3 who are working with the technology need to check in here for a moment. We have, I believe, about 20 minutes